Hello. The Divine Code reading for December 26th, pages 404 and 403 and 404. We are in the chapter Suicide and Sacrificing One's Life for the 7 Noahide Commandments. Topic number 7. If a person committed homicide because another person was threatening his life or limb or severe torture, this killer was committing an offense and is a murderer and will be punished by heaven. However, a court of law does not have permission to punish him because he was severely pressured. That's from the Rambam Laws of Kings 10:2. So a person that is under a severe pressure, and severe would be like his life is threatened or his limb is threatened, or if he's under torture or a threatening of severe torture, should he not commit the act, that person is still not permitted to kill another person. But if he does murder the other person, the person he's being threatened, person A is threatening person B unless he kills person C. So person B kills person C. Person B committed murder for killing person C. But he cannot be punished by a court of law because he was under duress. It's too difficult to go into the intentions of a person. Only the heavenly court can understand the intentions of the person sufficiently in that situation. Topic number 8. If a group of Gentiles is told, give over one of your group to be killed, or else all of you will be killed. They have no permission to hand over one person from the group. For the reason given in topic 4, however, if the murderers singled out their victim, and they will either kill that one particular victim or the whole group, it is permissible to hand over the one victim, since it cannot be said that the victim's blood is more red than that of the whole group. So it becomes like a utilitarian thing. If the assailants, group A, tells group B of the city that they have to hand over somebody from, they pick among themselves one person to die. Otherwise, they're going to kill the entire city. They don't have permission to pick out one person, because each person has his own right to exist, and you can't pick out one person. You can't actively pick out one person. However, if they say, okay, we need so-and-so, hand them over, otherwise we'll kill the entire city, the entire group. It is permissible to hand over one person because that one person was singled out by, was named. And therefore, the group that's handing them over, it's more of a passive thing on their part because they're already told who to hand over. And the one person, his life cannot be traded. You can't trade one person's life for another. So if the group is being told that they'll be killed, unless they hand over somebody, some miscellaneous person, you can't trade off the miscellaneous person for the group. But if the person is signaled out, therefore we're going to kill him, unless you don't hand him over, then we're going to kill everybody. Then the life is with the community, unless the death, the sentence is on the one person, and you can't trade the community for the sake of the one person. So it's whoever has the possession of life cannot have it taken away for the sake of the other group. But in the case where the one person signal out, he's already lost the possession of his life, and therefore it's a different scenario at that point. Topic number 9. Although a Gentile is not obligated to sacrifice his life for the sanctification of God's name, see Tractate Sanhedrin 74b, from which it can be learned that although a Gentile is not commanded to sacrifice his life so as not to transgress one of the Noahide commandments, it is nevertheless still considered a sanctification of God's name if he does so, even if there are no witnesses. Therefore, they should be permissible but not required for a Gentile in either a public or private situation. So in the Jewish law, there's a specific commandment to sanctify God's name. We don't have that specific commandment, and therefore in our situation we're allowed to, but we're not required to. And the specifics of the commandment in the Jewish situation, whether it's publicly or privately, would not necessarily be the same rules that would apply with a Gentile, because a Gentile is doing it by choice to begin with. So a Gentile is not obligated to sacrifice his life for the sanctification of God's name, that is to avoid committing idolatry or one of the other capital sins prohibited by the Noahide commandments at the loss of his life. It is permissible for him to do so, and this is not considered suicide. See Shulchan Aruch Yeridea, chapter 157, which rules this way regarding a Jew. Parshas Devarim writes that the same applies to a Gentile and cites Bereshis Rabbah, chapter 34, as a source. We can take proof from Abraham, who allowed himself to be thrown into the furnace by Nimrod, instead of being forced to commit idolatry. Since Abraham was not Jewish with the divine law, it proves that what he did is permitted for Gentiles, and it is not considered to be like suicide. So Abraham, according to the Midrash, Abraham was told either worship the false idol, or Nimrod was going to throw him into the fiery furnace. And Abraham allowed himself to be thrown into the fiery furnace rather than worshiping the idol. And a miracle happened, and he was saved from the fiery furnace. But that shows that it's permissible to do so. It's permissible to allow oneself to be thrown into to sacrifice one's life for the sanctity of God's name. See Rambam, The Laws of Kings 10:2. A Gentile who is forced is permitted to transgress. To prove that is not an obligation to transgress in this case, and the Gentile may give up his life instead. See Maharatz Chayat on Tractate Sota 11a, 11b, and Mesudak Chachma Parshas Vetzot Habraka. It appears that just as it is permitted for a Gentile to give up his life at the hands of others who wish to kill him, in order to avoid transgressing a capital sin, it is permitted for one to take one's own life in this case, and this is not considered suicide. So we learned that it's permitted to give up one's life, such as the case where someone is told to worship an idol or they'll be killed. It is permissible to be killed. And similarly, if that person committed suicide, that would not be considered suicide. If he killed himself to get out of that situation, it would not be considered suicide. It appears that this applies even if he is being forced to transgress the commandment in private. So even though in the Jewish law they're commanded to sanctify God's name by allowing themselves to be killed if it's being done publicly, the Gentile is because it's voluntary in either way, it would be permitted to do it in public or private, in a public or private situation. Likewise, if one is being forced through torture to transgress one of the 7 Noahide commandments, and it is unsure whether he will be capable of withstanding the suffering, it is permissible for him to take his life so as not to transgress, and this is not considered suicide. See Bereshit Rabbah, chapter 34, 13. The but excludes the case of the 3 men in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, or Chaim, quoted in Bedek Habayit of Beit Yosef Yeridea, chapter 157, brings 2 examples. One is that they went on their own into the furnace. That's the 3 martyrs in the book of Daniel, or the 3 that were saved by miracle in the book of Daniel. Since they were afraid they would succumb to idolatry through torture. And the second explanation is that they were thrown in it by Gentiles, but they were forbidden to throw themselves in. Tosafot on Tractate of Avodah Zarah 18a quotes only the first exclamation. So there's 2 explanations given regarding the 3 in the book of Daniel. The 3 people in the book of Daniel that were thrown in the fiery furnace. One is stating that they were allowed to do it because they were under duress. The other one says that they were not allowed to do it, but they were allowed to allow the Gentiles to do it. And the way it's being explained in the Divine Code is that it's allowed in either case. So it would be permitted to throw oneself into the fiery furnace to escape the situation. This permission applies only to avoid transgression, for which the Gentile would be liable for capital punishment in a Noahide court if it were committed willfully. So the only permission given to become a martyr, the only permission given to allow oneself to become a martyr, either through allowing oneself to be killed or through committing suicide to get out of a difficult situation, is only in cases where the person is being told to violate one of the 7 laws. That one of the laws would be in a manner that would be considered a capital offense. So if it's it's more of a minor violation, not a capital violation, but a non-capital violation, then the Gentile would not have permission to allow themselves to be martyred in that situation. Thank you.